Hey guys, let's talk about Gaza, Magog, and the Psalm 83 wars. What I'm going to present to y'all today is a very non-traditional view of how these wars are going to play out. This is something that I believe I'm seeing in the scriptures, something I believe that I'm sensing a little bit in the spirit. I am not an expert on these wars by any stretch of the imagination. I have not studied them that much. I am presenting this as a new possible theory. I am open to any suggestions people may have. This is just something that I'm kind of curious about and would like to know a little more about, but I'm just going to share my theories and put them out there and see what people think. So, when talking about the Magog War, we're going to be using Ezekiel 38 and 39, the book of Revelation, and some prophecies in Daniel. Oh, we're also going to be using Luke 21. I forgot to write that up here. So, we'll put Luke up there as well. Now, let's start with Ezekiel 38 and 39. Guys, when I read Ezekiel 38 and 39, I'm actually seeing three different waves of this war, or what I believe to be. Keep in mind, this is just my theory, my belief. I believe I'm seeing three different waves of Magog. And the reason I say that is because I think I'm seeing three different endings to three different wars. Now, here's what I mean. We are told that on the one hand, people who pass through the valley are going to put flags next to dead bodies, and those bodies are going to be buried. Okay, so we got flags and they're going to be buried. But then in Revelation 19, as well as Ezekiel, we're told that the bodies are going to be fed to the birds. But then if you flip on over to Revelation 20, after the millennial reign, we see that the bodies are being consumed with fire. They're being burned up with fire. Okay, so I think these are three different wars, three different waves of war, and we're seeing three different endings to the war. Now, this one happens at the second coming. This one is after the millennial reign, and I believe this one might be pre-trib or right at the beginning of the tribulation period. And I'll explain that later on. Now, some other clues we are given are about the weapons they're using. Okay? After the millennial reign, because we're not studying war during the millennial reign, and people are not mass producing weapons like they are now, it's plausible that the weapons are going to be primitive right here after the millennial reign, okay? But because these men are being consumed with fire, we can maybe assume that their weapons will be consumed as well. In other words, they're not going to be burning weapons for 7 years at this point, okay? Now, if we talk about the second coming, it is possible, after 7 years of tribulation, that they would have to come on horses and they would have to use primitive weapons. It is possible that when the millennial reign starts, that the Israelites could be burning these primitive weapons for 7 years as a memorial to the 7-year tribulation they just came out of. Now, we have modern weapons today. Does that mean that Magog and the armies would not try to come against Israel with primitive weapons that, one, cannot be detected by radar, two, would give them an advantage in the mountains of Israel, and three, would allow them to go undetected throughout Israel for a long time? Is it also possible that they come with some modern weapons, and the modern weapons have nuclear capabilities, and maybe that's what's being used for fuel as well? So can we say they are burning weapons for 7 years here? I think so. I think we're seeing a double fulfillment of this. Okay, I think they're going to burn modern weapons, and I think they're going to do it here as a memorial. Now, if you look at the scriptures, it tells you that the people who are living in Israel will burn the weapons for 7 years. It does not say the Jews must do it. We know the Jews are going to flee at mid-trib. It does not say the Jews have to be the ones burning those weapons. I'm going to show you who I think is burning those weapons. Okay? Now, we have another clue. If you read about Magog in Ezekiel 38, you're going to find out that we have 2 time periods. He talks about 7 months, and he talks about 7 years. Let me show you what I think that's about. If you read Ezekiel 38 and 39, you can see the prophecy flip-flopping back and forth between the second coming, where you have the birds eating the body, and after the millennial reign, where Jesus sends his fire of wrath. Okay? In Ezekiel 38, he starts out talking about the second coming. If you look at 1 through verse 4, he's talking about how he's going to bring them down on horses with all their primitive weapons. Now, look at what he's saying here. In verse 4. He says, I will turn thee back and put hooks into your jaws, and I will bring you down to Israel. Now listen, if he's going to put hooks in their jaws and turn them back, does that not imply they've already been down once before? I think it does. I think he's saying, look, I'm going to bring you back down again. Meaning you've already been here once before. And look what it says. It says, Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya will be with you. Does that not imply that Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya were not with them the first time? I think it does. I think what he's saying is when they come back at the second coming, they're going to have Persia, Egypt, Libya, and Ethiopia. Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya. But the first time, they did not have these countries with them. Okay? I think that's what he's saying here. So he's implying that there's a first wave that happens before the second coming and before the millennial reign. When you get to chapter 39, I think he tells us the same thing again in verse 2. He says, I will turn thee back and leave but a sixth part of thee, And I will cause thee to come up from the north parts and bring thee upon the mountains of Israel. And then he says, I'm going to knock your primitive weapons out of your hand. So once again, he's saying, I'm going to bring you back again. And he said, the first time, I'm going to destroy 5/6 of your army. And there's only going to be 1/6 of you left. But I'm going to bring you back at the second coming. So if we have 3 waves of Magog, which is just my theory, it's what I believe so far. If we have 3 waves of Magog, where does Psalm 83 fit into all this? And what's the 7 months, 7 years about? Well, here's what I'm theorizing. Alright, let's imagine that this is the land of Israel. This little dot right here is Jerusalem. These surrounding armies are the ones mentioned in Psalm 83. We'll call them the 83 hordes. And then these outer countries, Russia, China, Iran, all around to Egypt, Libya, and Ethiopia, we'll call those the Magog people, okay? Now, let's suppose for one moment that these 7 months, 7 years was a clue that God gave us about the timing of all of this. We know that the tribulation period is for 7 years and 6 months. Alright? What if, by giving us that extra month, God was pointing us to a specific timing? If you take God's tabernacles, which I believe to be the middle of November, the 15th through the 21st of November. If you take that and you go forward 7 months, it will actually bring you to second Passover. Okay, with God's true tabernacles being the middle of November, from about the 15th to the 21st, 22nd. If you go forward 7 months, that brings you to June, which I believe is God's second Passover. I think that 7th month is an indication that it's second Passover, not first, okay? But I also believe it's an indication of these 6 months that take place before the raptures start happening. But we have 2 calendars to consider. We have the Jewish calendar, which God hates, and we have God's true calendar. All right? So if you take what has gone on in Gaza right now, all right, and you add 7 months to that, it will bring you around to, what is it? November, December, January, February, March, April, May, around to May, which would be God's true first Passover. Now, I'm going to show you how all this seems to fit together, okay? Now, when he's talking about burning weapons for 7 years, I truly believe he's talking about the tribulation period. Oops, y'all can't see that. I'm sorry. All right, that's better. So, let's just suppose, and this is just my theory, y'all. This is my theory. Let's suppose that Magog does come in 3 waves. Let's suppose that Magog comes here, here, and then after the millennial reign would be number 3. Watch what I think might happen. If you go back to Ezekiel, it's 30, I think it's 39, hold on. Yeah, go to Ezekiel 39, verses 12 through 15. Listen. 7 months shall the house of Israel be burying them, and that they may cleanse the land. Yea, all the people of the land shall bury them, and it shall be to them a renown the day that I shall be glorified, saith the Lord God. And they shall sever out men of continual employment, passing through the land to bury with the passengers those that remain upon the face of the earth to cleanse it. Now listen to this part. Listen to this part. After the end of 7 months, they will start a search. And the passengers that pass through the land, when they see a bone, they're going to mark it for burial. Now, y'all, I don't think this is a nuclear weapon. Because if this is a nuclear weapon, then these people would not be burying bodies for 7 months. And then they start marking them 7 months later for hazardous material. If these people are truly radiated, you would mark them right away. All right? So I think something else is going on here, and I'm going to show you what I think that is. I think, and this is just my opinion, that Magog is behind what's happening in Gaza right now. But because it's the first wave, Egypt, Libya, and Ethiopia don't have to be with them. That's why we don't see that alignment right now. I think that Magog set up this whole thing to have Gaza be the guinea pig. And they want to draw Israel, IDF, into Gaza. They want to tie them up with this war in Gaza. Now, remember what I said. The people of Israel are going to bury bodies for 7 months. But after that, it will be passengers who will mark the bodies for burial. Okay? Here's what I think they're doing. I think the Magog group has set up Gaza as a trap. This thing, is it possible, y'all? I'm just saying, is it possible this thing could drag on for 7 months? Israel could be burying bodies from now until Passover of next year. Just a theory. And that would be the 7 months. It does not say that they will bury Magog for 7 months. Magog is behind this, yes. But it does not say that they will bury destroyed Magog people for 7 months. All right? So let's make that distinction. Is it possible they're going to bury these bodies not off and on, but from now till next Passover? And then, according to Daniel, the first month, 24th day, Jesus appeared to him and said what? He said, "The prince of Persia, Iran, has withheld me for 21 days. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to fight him again." Okay? So we have Jesus showing up right here, around this time frame, and saying, look, the prince of Persia has come against me, has delayed me, and I got to go back and fight him again. All right? So here's what I think could be happening. Gaza ties up Israel for 7 months. After the IDF gets tied up down here in Gaza, Russia and Iran are going to come in from the north right here and try to surprise Israel. But because the Red Horse Rider has not gone out yet, that's the second seal, right? It hasn't gone out yet. Jesus is going to stop this. And I think the way he's going to stop it is by killing 5/6 of the Magog army up here in the mountains of Israel. I think there's going to be massive earthquakes. I think there's going to be volcanoes going off. I think this is going to destroy this army. I think God's going to trap them right here in the mountains and destroy every last one of them. So now that they've been burying bodies from Gaza for 7 months, they got all these bodies they got to bury now. And that's where the flags and the passengers come into play. And I think all of it's going to happen right around this time frame right here. In my opinion, this is going to open the door for a peace treaty. I believe, my theory, my opinion, that when this happens to Gog and Magog, these Psalm 83 hordes are going to be absolutely terrified. Like I said, y'all, this is not the traditional view. I'm presenting something completely different. I think the Psalm 83 hordes are going to be so terrified of what God did to these big nations, and they're not going to have the support of Russia and Iran and all them anymore, and they're going to be so terrified, they're going to sign a peace treaty with Israel. I think they're going to be so scared, they're going to let Israel rebuild the temple and everything. Just my opinion. And I think Israel's going to be okay for the first 3.5 years of this tribulation period right here. Okay? I think this may be the peace and safety we're looking for. Now, here's what I think is going to happen around mid-trib, because we got a lot going on at mid-trib. Somewhere around mid-trib, Satan's going to show up. Satan's going to make war with the saints. The fallen angels are released from the abyss somewhere around in the fall time. They're going to make war with the saints, kill the 2 witnesses. And the Bible says that Satan will overcome the saints and kill them. Now, Satan's going to start setting up the abomination that causes desolation. Hear what I'm saying. Desolation. Jerusalem and Israel will become or start becoming desolate. There's a group of elect that are going to start fleeing back here at the Revelation 12 sign, and they're going to be protected 1,260 days. There's another group that's going to flee here and be protected for 1,260 days. These Jews, according to Revelation 12, are going to be fleeing, running. They're going to be running away. They're going to be scared of something. They're going to leave. Okay? And it tells us that Satan's going to go after them with a flood. He's referencing these fallen angels that come out of the abyss for 5 months, because the flood waters were on the earth for 5 months. When these Jews start fleeing, this is when I believe the Psalm 83 hordes are going to find new courage. They're going to rally up, and they're going to come in, and they're going to surround Jerusalem. Right here. Now, as these Jews start fleeing, we run into another problem. If Jerusalem is surrounded by armies, you have people who live in the north who cannot flee past Jerusalem down here to Bozrah. They can't go to Petra. Now, the ones living down here in the south, they can get to Petra, but the ones living in the north, they can't. They got to go somewhere else. Where are they going to go? I believe they're going to go up here to Damascus. Now, why in the world do I say Damascus? Well, there's several reasons. One, Petra and Damascus are both located on major riverbeds, so they're going to need that water supply. But there's also another reason. If you read Isaiah 17:1 and 2, it does not say that Damascus will be destroyed with nuclear weapons. I know that's a popular view. I personally do not hold that view. At one time I did think that it was possible, but now I don't. And the reason I don't is because if you read verses 1 and 2, the burden of Damascus, behold, Damascus is taken away from being a city. It shall be a ruinous heap. Okay? Well, it's already a ruinous heap. We see that now. The cities are forsaken. The cities of Aurora are forsaken. They shall be for flocks. So not only is he talking about animals, but what does Jesus call his people? Sheep. He is the shepherd of the flock, right? They shall lie down, and none shall make them afraid. Guys, if they're on a major riverbed and they got plenty of food, is God not taking care of them? Yes. It's possible the people that go to Petra are going to have to eat manna and drink water from the river. And I'm not saying that they're going to eat the animals in Damascus. I'm just saying they will be available to them. And nobody will make them afraid. So yeah, I think they're going to flee to Damascus. Another reason I think that is because of the Apostle Paul. The Apostle Paul. He was on his way to Damascus to kill the believers, and Jesus stopped him. Now, didn't Jesus say he would come and protect his elect? Isn't Jesus seen coming from Bozrah? And doesn't he have a blood-stained garment because he protected his people? Okay. So, why isn't he going to Damascus to protect them? Well, it could be that it's because they're living in safety with no problem. So we're told that Jerusalem is going to be trodden underfoot until the time of the Gentiles has been fulfilled, all the way to the end. And the point I was making a while ago about the weapons is that the Jews could burn the weapons for the first 3.5, but once they flee and these hordes take over, they can burn the weapons for the remaining 3.5 years. The Bible does not say that it has to be the Jews burning the weapons. Now, it tells us in, I think it's Daniel, that Satan gets news from the north and the east that disturbs him. So near the end of the tribulation period, I think the second wave of Gog and Magog is going to happen. But this time it's going to be Russia, China, Iran, all these other nations, Egypt, Libya, and Ethiopia. I think they're going to come against Jerusalem because they want the resources and they want to take Satan out and take over the world and get these resources. Satan is troubled by news from the north that these people are coming against him again. He knows that the Psalm 83 hordes are not going to be able to hold off this big of an army right here. And I think they meet right here at the Valley of Megiddo for the Battle of Armageddon. And this is where Jesus returns with us. This is the second wave, in my opinion, where he destroys Magog a second time. This is where he feeds their bodies to the birds. And this is where Satan is done away with. One thing I forgot to mention earlier is that I believe when Satan breaks this peace treaty at mid-trib, that's part of what's going to make the Jews afraid. That's part of what's going to give these Psalm 83 hordes part of their courage to come against Jerusalem. And in my opinion, I also believe that Israel is not going to expand its borders, and take the land back, the original land borders back, until the second coming, when Magog has been destroyed a second time and Psalm 83 hordes have been destroyed. Now, it says when Jesus returns that all the walls are going to fall to the ground. So Israel does not become an unwalled nation, I believe, until after the second coming. So when it talks about Gog and Magog going up against an unwalled village or city or town, I believe he's referring to that third wave after the millennial reign, when we know for a fact Israel will be living in peace and safety, okay? So why do I think the Psalm 83 war is going to happen right here at mid-trib instead of pre-trib? Well, the main reason is because of it's verse 3. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people and consulted against thy hidden ones. Hidden. I think this is a clue. The hidden ones. Who's hiding? Who's hiding? It's the elect. The elect who start fleeing at mid-trib. They are hiding in Damascus and Petra, I believe. And Satan's going to go after them with the flood. I think these are the hidden ones they are referring to. And the psalmist goes on to say, I want the birds to eat their flesh. Well, that's a reference to the second coming where Magog has birds eating their flesh. And it says, as the fire burneth a wood. So in verse 14, as a fire burneth a wood. Were we not just talking about burning primitive wooden weapons? And as the flames setteth the mountains on fire. Did we not just talk about Magog getting trapped in the mountains and brimstone from a volcano going off? Sorry about that. And the brimstone from the volcanoes going off and killing them. So he's making a reference to the fact that these Psalm 83 people are the ones who are going to be burning these weapons. And he's making reference to the Magog hordes being trapped in the mountains and killed with brimstone and fire and hailstones and flood and all that. So persecute them with thy tempest and make them afraid with thy storm. Fill their faces with shame that they may seek thy name, O Lord. All right. So when he's talking about let the birds eat their bodies and stuff, I believe that this goes back to Psalm 83 hordes being around until the end of the trib and coming up to the valley of Megiddo to fight against Magog, and they're both going to have the same outcome. They're going to die in the field. The birds are going to eat their bodies. But I also believe he's making reference to these people being the ones who burned the weapons for the last 3.5 years. One more thing I'd like to add about the 83 hordes coming at mid-trib. If you look in Psalm 83 verse 12, it says, they are saying to themselves, let us take to ourselves the houses of God in possession. Why are they talking about taking the houses of God, the houses in the promised land as a possession? Why are they doing that? It's because a lot of these people are living right now as refugees, and these Jews have fled Israel, and all these houses are just sitting there wide open. Guys, I'm going to throw one more thing out there and then I'm going to wrap this up. This is just my opinion. I'm open to any ideas or suggestions. I'd love to hear what y'all have to say. One more thing I think might happen right back here. After the 7 months of Israel possibly burying bodies from this Gaza mess, Russia steps in, Iran steps in, and I think it is possible that they may attack America at the same time. Just my opinion. But anyway, I look forward to your comments. I hope y'all have a great day. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May he lift up his countenance upon you and give you his peace. Shalom.